All right, so while we're waiting for folks to jump in, I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of context so you know what to expect. We're going to kind of do this in rounds so that we can kind of break things up. None of us are talking for too long a period of time. And what I've found in the past is that the topics that are most relevant to students, come on in. Topics that are most relevant to people is, first of all, they want to know who the heck the people are in front of the room, are that if they're in front of them, and a bit about our background. I think it's always fascinating to hear how kind of someone chose to do what they're doing and a little bit of what they're currently doing today. Then the typical question is, once they know who the people are and what their roles are, how'd you get there? Like, what path did you take? And I think what you're going to find for every single one of us is that the paths are rarely linear. For a few really, really lucky people, yeah, like they know what they want to do when they grow up and they go to college for that, and it's a happily ever after. But most of us find ourselves with different twists, turns, and challenges, and we'll share a bit of that. Like it or not, free advice is rampant, and we all can probably offer our own free advice based on our experiences. Advice is kind of buyer beware because you got to understand the context and the circumstances that someone went through. And so the advice that one of us share, you can decide how you want to apply it. But the neat thing is, at least before you hear our advice, you know who we are, what we're doing, and how we got there, so you can take all that into account. And then just questions and answers from you guys. It's kind of how we'll also run that way. And I'm a big believer in starting on time or early. So let's just get this rolling. Aaron, since you're here on the left, let's just go right to left from their perspective. Would you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, what you do, and current job and role?
Perfect. So I'm Erin Galino. I'm currently the Chief Financial and Administrative Officer for the Port of Tacoma, which is a municipal corporation. So we're actually a governmental agency. And so we serve Pierce County, and our role is economic development. And I've done that for about 13 years. It's a very eclectic role. I have not just your traditional accounting, finance, treasury, but I also have contracts. I have security. I have whatever needs to be done. So sometimes in a smaller organization, that's just kind of what you need to do. And when I'm not at work, I am the mother of two. I have a 29-year-old daughter who's an ICU nurse and a 26-year-old son who is a field service engineer for Abbott Molecular and got his master's at UW. So we have one husky. Most of the rest of the family's cougars.
So hello, how are we doing?
Come on in.
I went to the wrong building. I guess you should read the email a little more carefully.
You can't use an excuse that you were just getting a haircut.
No, absolutely not. Excuse me, everybody. Sorry about that. Thank you so much.
And so before I've actually had in my professional career 2 employers. So the Port of Tacoma, and before that I was 23 years with Weyerhaeuser. And when we talk a little bit about background, I'll talk a little bit more about my journey. But basically I came up here in '82 to go to University of Puget Sound and never left.
Never left. Interesting. Well, Aaron, you said something that I think is really important for this group to hear, is that the role that we play on a daily basis depends a lot on the size and the complexity of our organization. And a lot of people want to connect a title with the set of job duties, and it's so variable. I just had a friend move from being a pretty senior executive with a really large multinational billion-dollar publicly traded corporation to a small privately held one. And what he said is that, Chris, I used to operate right here as an executive, and now I'm either making decisions that I used to think were way above my pay grade, or I'm down here taking out the trash. So does that sound?
Pretty much.
Yeah. I can relate to, my name is Chris, last name's Inverso. Well, like Aaron, I came to Pierce County to study as an undergraduate and never left. So I went to PLU in the 90s, was a biology major, chemistry minor, stumbled into banking, and then stumbled my way into an MBA here, and going into finance as a career profession, as an extension of the commercial banking that I did, and worked for a privately held, rapidly growing manufacturer, became CEO last year. And thank you, and have overseen 2 acquisitions of key competitors. We're a diversified manufacturer. We have about 6 different businesses that we're in, and we operate a lot like a holding company that just provides a lot of scalable resources to individual business units that specialize in the markets in which they serve and really try to create value rapidly in a changing environment. Our big businesses are owning outdoor space. So we are one of the largest OEMs of retractable awnings, power screens, and pergolas that go inside backyards, compete with large European competitors as well as local smaller OEMs. We also are in the display and exhibit and major event business. So name a sports stadium. We've had a hand in that. We just got done meeting with the Mariners yesterday on their playoff kind of circumstances. And the neat thing is they're looking at playing the Tampa Bay Rays. We just bought a display company equal our size in Tampa. So no matter where the games get played, I'm going to get the business, which is kind of a fun game. We also have a full line of commercial tents that we sell to tent rental dealers across the US and North America. We have a full line of outdoor products, meaning like yurts, cabins, cottages, teepees that are sold to end users or resorts for kind of glamping experiences. And then we just have a heck of a lot of extra manufacturing capabilities from time to time. So we said, let's create an industrial division and just make things for people on a contract basis. And so that's become a business of its own. So that's who I am. I just got my MBA here, never really had a formal finance background in terms of classes, although I picked up a few, both as an undergraduate and a graduate student. And I'm here mostly because I served as CFO for 7 years. So I kind of had that blend of business operations and understanding how finance fits into that. So I come from more of the business operations management route versus a true finance major.
Hello, sorry about being on the last second there. So interesting, you got a couple of people doing different things, but kind of finance orientated, right? So Chris, CFO, actually sitting in the role. I work for a company called PitchBook, based out of Seattle. They got offices in Hong Kong, Singapore, San Francisco, New York, and London now. And what we do is we sell a SaaS product to finance professionals primarily. And that can be people in the private equity space. It can be people in venture capital. It can be investment bankers. It can be people in a pure finance role at a VC or PE-backed company. Work with public companies a lot as well. So I myself am in a sales role, but I'm working primarily with finance professionals, again, across a myriad of different duties at these different companies and investment shops. Been doing that for about 7 years now. And it's, I haven't wanted to go do anything else. It's awesome. I get to talk to people every day that are doing something different. For example, he was just talking about doing M&A with his company and purchasing some other groups like in Tampa. That is absolutely a conversation I have every day, is talking to groups like someone like Chris that's trying to go out and find acquisitions or, bolt on, make their business bigger and better, do it through inorganic growth. So definitely the area I service are people like Chris typically. So I think where I sit on this panel is I bring some information kind of from that background, and then I can talk about some of the tangential industries and roles that, are in this finance space in general.
Sitting on this panel with you the last 5 years, it's funny how our roles have.
Yes, I know. Well, I was going to say, now CEO, I should be not. If you guys aren't clients yet, we're going to have a conversation after this. So M&A.
Yeah.
Hey there. I'm CW. I'm the Chief Fiduciary Officer at Pertigo Trust Bank. So Pertigo, probably no one's heard of Pertigo because we're relatively new. We're an early stage startup. We do digital asset banking only, which means we custody digital assets like crypto, NFTs, and things like that for institutional clients. So it's not a retail bank, but it's institutional. We're one of 3 federally chartered banks. So the OCC, which is the federal regulator, doesn't usually just hand those out. So we're definitely in a good spot right now. We're one of 3 banks nationally that can do institutional crypto custody for clients. As a Chief Fiduciary Officer, so that's kind of a weird title, right? I'm in charge of all client service and relationship management for Pertigo. So all of our institutional clients, the retention, the happiness, the welfare of those clients. And the fiduciary part is really, what would we say, the duty of care, the conflict of interest. So we have to put our clients' interests ahead of our own always. And so my job, and I'm the one that I guess can technically go, I could wear the orange jumpsuit and go to jail if Pertigo doesn't take care of their clients or there's a conflict of interest. And so you sign on that dotted line that you're going to take care of your clients first. So prior to that, I worked at Russell Investments for about 18 years. Russell used to be in downtown Tacoma. They moved up to Seattle about 12 years ago. And I worked in their institutional asset management shop. Did client service there as well. So my background is primarily institutional, it's primarily client service, and it's primarily finance.
I have a quick question for you. Are you servicing mainly like pension funds and large institutions like that, or more like family offices and more obscure groups of capital?
So we tier our business. I would say predominantly it is, I would say crypto native, crypto foundations, exchanges, alts managers, hedge funds, things like that. Most retirement plans haven't quite gotten there yet, but it's definitely an alt hedge type of market, along with all of the crypto native type of folks.
So are you handling some of the exchanges that do like dollar-based or dollar-pegged crypto and some of that?
I can't give any names, but if you happen to think of an exchange, like a pick one, and they have their names on stadiums, you could probably come up with some of the
customers. Yeah, I just want to give them some color commentary that's the kind of folks you work with.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, it's, we're obviously starting with that inner circle of the crypto community where they feel safe in that environment. And then we're broadening out to where the hedge and all tends to take over. And then you move into more corporate space. You'd be surprised at how many, I was talking to Aaron before we met, before we started. You'd be surprised at how many just local corporate companies have crypto on the books on their balance sheet. And they want a safe and secure way to store that. And that's why we're here.
You want to make a quick distinction between public markets and alt and hedge fund? For anybody that's not familiar with that, you have your typical equity markets, your publicly traded companies and your stocks, ETFs, things like that, right? Very, very well-known space. And you have these, what we call alternative investments, right? And one of those absolutely crypto falls under. You could also throw private equity, venture capital, distressed debt, any kind of, real estate funds, for example. All of those fit into this alternative space that he's kind of alluding to here.
Yeah. Partly why we're here, just to give you guys exposure to the concepts. A lot of times people throw around acronyms and different terminology from different industries. It sounds really intimidating when you're a student. You find out when you get to our spaces that mostly it's not rocket scientists. Yes, there's some really smart CFAs out there. Don't want to downplay that. But I think generally what I find is a lot of students are intimidated by this. And once you get in there, you find out that it's really just about being a quick study of things, being intuitively smart, being humble and being willing to learn and being willing to work hard and have grit to persevere. You'll find that that's going to bring you a lot farther than some specialized technical knowledge that everyone seems to have and you don't, because we're all that person that has that imposter syndrome, at least at times we play that role. So Aaron, tell us a little bit about your background, education, degrees held, and maybe a little bit on your career path and how you got here.
So how many are majoring in accounting? Okay, so I fit that profile of the person, like, you know what, I'm kind of good at math, I like history. I took an accounting class in high school. Maybe I should do this for a living. So I went off to the University of Puget Sound to get an accounting degree, partly because it was a small classroom, so check. I think that, when you think of the comparisons, what you can get here, that more intimate experience, you're not one of like 700 people in the classroom, really makes a difference because, so as I started going through and taking my accounting classes, I also made sure I took a lot of, diverse, classes like history or other things that kind of helped me think of how do I be a well-rounded accountant? But when you're going through the accounting program, and you guys might be experiencing this, it used to be, and I'm going to date myself, it was the big 8. There were 8 firms and you hired with one of those public accounting firms and that's what you did. And I got into that interview process and went, I don't think I want to do this. So then it kind of opened up this world of internal auditing. So I really wanted the audit experience, but what ended up happening as I went through that is this wonderful little company up the street called Weyerhaeuser had an internal audit function. And so I ended up going into the company and going into internal audits, spent my first couple of years there. And auditing in whatever form you do for anyone, even if you're not in accounting, it is such a tremendous foundation because it helps you understand risk. It helps you understand process. It helps you understand problem solving. So, and then you start to learn the business. And so that was kind of my entry point was, I wanted an accounting degree, but I really wanted to go that, that auditor, process. And so then from there, I went out and worked in a number of different businesses at Weyerhaeuser, financial analysis, budgeting, some mostly divestiture, not acquisitions.
Offloading.
Yeah, so Weyerhaeuser went from about 6 billion to 22 billion back to about 8 billion in my journey there. So that tells you a little bit about the cycle of what was going on in forest products. But so then I actually went back to internal audit and was director of internal audit. And spent about 3 years, there's just a few things that happened. Enron, Sarbanes-Oxley, Arthur Anderson imploded, who was our auditor. So, it was just a short, interesting 3 years. But then and then, I took a leap of faith and went over and helped them run $100 million finance SAP financial system implementation. So, and then I went on to do some other things around problem solving, corporate functions, and those kinds of things that are really unique to a large corporate entity. And then as Weyerhaeuser was going, so I had this all kicked off from the accounting. So, I like to kind of remind people that the big, 3 or 4, whatever, and there's so many good firms out there if you want to do external, auditing. That's a great experience, but there's also other paths. There's also the, state auditors, governmental auditing, the state auditor's office, because a lot of what they do is compliance. So you're going in, you're learning the processes. You're not just attesting on the balances. You're have an opportunity to kind of learn and again, kind of build that risk base. So when I left Weyerhaeuser, I wanted to do something different, and the Port of Tacoma needed a CFO, and they were kind of in a really difficult situation at that time, kind of rebounding from kind of overgrowth and downsizing and a new financial system and a new leader. And so I kind of packaged up all my experiences and then decided this is kind of my public service. So because we are a public entity, and it was the best way to serve Pierce County, and the mission of the port is about creating jobs, and that's a lot more fun than eliminating jobs. So, and I liked, partly why I went from that big, environment was really, Weyerhaeuser was big. We had all these different wonderful opportunities to be in smaller micro environments. It wasn't overwhelming. But what I liked about the port is we actually are small. And so, yeah, any given day, I might be managing something that's going on at the front desk, dealing with something like there's a fire or a train derailment, and, issuing financial statements. So but I liked that part of it because I got to be involved in everything. And again, it serves Pierce County. So, that's a little bit about my background. And so for you guys this is really fun listening to all these different, experiences and journeys and what we've done. But like I said, when you're looking at where do you start out, learn the foundation. There's that start out, get some technical experience, but never stop building that ability to be part of a team, to listen, to understand how something works. Because at the end of the day, people who can provide solutions are always going to be in demand. So,
Well said.
thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
So I know that it's intrinsically in society and business in general. So like the technical skills, finance and accounting, like what would you say to people that will tell you it'll be automated by AI systems in the next few decades? Do you think there's a possibility of that?
No. It will change. It will change. And I'll just give a really brief example. When I started with Weyerhaeuser, and we were auditor, my first assignment, I'd go out to Plymouth, North Carolina for 6 weeks because all the accounting was done on site. Everything was local, systems, technology. And over the course of time, it shifted where we utilize, systems and technology to a higher level. So what happens is more of the work would be done locally in terms of, analysis tools, those kinds of things. But I don't see a replacement because you can never really totally eliminate judgment. And so you're able to process information faster, different, but you still need to be able to look at it and to understand it and to make recommendations from it. So I would say in some cases, like the data sciences are creating more demand for people with critical thinking because you've got all this data. Now, what's it telling you?
Like what's the process to get to this data? And
I talked to a lot of people on finance teams at companies with all sizes, and a lot of them are doing traditional finance work. So, hey, they call it accounting or processing, right? But again, a lot of these companies are also taking that data and doing predictive modeling as well. So a lot of these folks in these finance positions are in fact doing this role, but they're touching this aspect of it as well, right? And I think that's, as she's kind of mentioning, that's the growth they're seeing across the industry.
Yeah. And obviously, people aren't using green sheets anymore and penciling in debits and credits with an adding machine. Both of us probably saw a period of time when that was happening. Literally over the course of our careers, we've had a lot of change. So in that sense, you do have automation. I have an interesting perspective because I sit on the customer advisory board for Epicor, which is an ERP software, not unlike SAP and Oracle. I just got off a 2-hour call, just hearing what their strategic vision is moving forward and talking about some of their plans. And they also brought someone in from Gartner to talk about automation today. And they actually talked about 3 types of automation. One is people automation or labor automation. How do you automate a step that actually makes that person more efficient with their time? And that's a lot of what accounting software has done for us. The second one is system automation, where you heavily use APIs to connect different systems so that instead of having an employee have to take one file and drop it in a different spot or hand key something, you automate some of that. So it's not so much making their process faster, but just getting the system to connect. One of the ways that we do that is with AP invoices. It used to be that, you'd fax something in or get in the mail and the person's opening like this. And now you can have an automatically attended either FTP site or a mailbox that just gets dropped into accounting software. You have OCR that will read the page and put it in there. And then they'll you move to the next step, which is automated decision-making. So you could say if this AP invoices is within a certain threshold of what the original PO was or the PAC slip was, with that data is already in there, then you can decide whether you want to approve and pay that, or if you want to kick it to an exception. I think that last point is where I partly would say that there's still going to be jobs, and I agree with both Aaron and Pat, is that if you look at our economy globally, it's growing, right? Like we've used technology, and yet there are more business jobs ever than there ever were before. You just move to like what real estate investors say, a higher and better use of that real estate. You move to a higher and better use of that human being's time and ability. And there always are going to be exceptions that need to be managed by human beings. You cannot automate everything. My rule of thumb for my employees has been 80-85%. You can automate that remaining 50%. You're gonna have to kick to an exception process and manage it that way. But then there's also the strategic decisions like, are you gonna divest of this or not? Are you gonna acquire this or that? And those are the decisions that more than ever, you're relying on people with technical knowledge, but also just general business savvy. So are the jobs that maybe you learn about gonna still be here in 2 years or in 10 years? Yeah, they're probably gonna change. Are there going to be opportunities for people that invest in themselves, invest in the kind of education that you guys have? Absolutely. Well, if anyone has anything to add to that.
I would just add, I'm on the client side, so, I don't work in the finance department, but I would say we work with finance professionals. And the biggest thing that comes out of the client side is trust. And I don't just trust what I document, or I don't trust the data. I trust when I'm talking to somebody. And so part of ours is to build that rapport with clients that I'm not sitting across from the table from them. I'm sitting with them on the same side of the table, that we're working together to solve their problems. So we can have a lot of automation. You can have all the numbers, you can have all the risk models, go to town. But at the end of the day, on our side of the business, it's about the client relationships. So I don't think you can automate some of that. I can send you reports, I can do all that kind of stuff. But the conversation, the trust, the relationship is important.
I'm in sales, and you could automate everything I do, right? Essentially, where you could give someone an order form, they can go in and pick what they wanted and buy it, right? But we wouldn't have the same revenue we have without salespeople. So even paying all those salespeople, those salaries, the commissions, everything like that, that is still worth it because they're pulling that much more delta out of having a human sell that to another human opposed to having some machine do it.
Yeah, cool. You good? All right. So I actually realized that I threw in some of my background when I did my intro. So sometimes it's tough to separate those things. So I won't bore you with those details again, and I'll also try to separate it from the advice in the next one. But I want to give you guys just a different view. I really struggled during the early parts of my career, struggled with indecision, tried to do one thing that didn't work and pivoted to another. And went through a period of time when I had a number of jobs in a short period of time and had that oh no moment of what does my resume look like, which maybe some people can relate here if they've already worked a little bit and end up in the MBA side, or maybe people that are coming out don't want to end up in that spot. And made several pivots in my career. I thought I was going to stay in banking for quite a long time. And then sort of made a pivot more into being a finance professional. Thought that that's where I was going to spend a lot of my time. And ultimately, I think I found that the right blend for me is executive management, at least it's at a certain level in our economy based on company size. And so the process has not been easy. And I've learned a lot about myself in the process. So I shared that without trying to go into the advice side of it a little bit, but just maybe it's a little bit of a tale for the lost souls of trying to figure out what they want to do when they grow up, is that don't lose hope, keep persevering and keep kind of asking yourself questions about where you want to go.
Gonna add to that, just growth and reflection is huge, right? I think, you know, if you get in, let's say you get your first role and you're thinking, what skills do I need to learn? I want to get to this, right? I think just staying hungry in learning and continuing to build your knowledge base is always helpful, but just stay curious and then be open to growth and reflection, because you're not going to be, and with everything, I know that's very cliche sounding, but a lot of people get stuck doing the exact same thing. They feel comfortable doing that thing and they might have an issue with it, but they're not going to do anything to overcome that issue. And I think that's critical. If you're looking for that next step and you built this skill set, I think it's critical that you go and obtain that next skill set, or you go after that thing. That's whether that's going back for an MBA, or it's, hey, taking some sort of operational role that is also siloed with finance so that you can learn the operational side of the business and build that skill set. Every opportunity I've had where I can learn a little bit more and apply that to my role has helped with my growth in my career. And I would just echo that sentiment.
Yeah. So a few decisions I made along the way that may or may not help you. I didn't like where my career was going because I was stuck in kind of a lower level banking role. So I decided to go back to school. That was my first decision, just go back to school, change my education. When I realized where I really wanted to go and get positioned as a financial professional, I had to take a step back and pay and enroll. And that was a little bit risky because, you know, you kind of want to show this continuous growth on your resume. But for me, that going backwards was really good because then I was able to accelerate in the right track versus trying to like keep going on the ladder I was on and then jump over at a high level. I think it's really hard to jump over at a high level of a ladder. I think it's really easy to move over a ladder when you're at a lower level and then climb a little bit that way. So those are two key decisions I made. And then I used my education to open doors. I didn't know it was going to happen that way, but the reason I was able to move that ladder initially was a speaker that came into one of my classes when I was a student. And ultimately it was the owner of the company that I was serving as a commercial banker that made the invitation to come be CFO. So those are just some small parts of my career path, very nonlinear. And ultimately when the business was sold to a private equity firm last year, I had the opportunity to take it over. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I will have to talk about that after.
So a little bit about your career path?
So Altaf Merchant was my teacher in the marketing, and I love the way he presented the information. He was so passionate about marketing, right? And as I was coming into school, I knew I wanted to be generally involved in business. I'm not a huge numbers guy, you know, you're not going to catch me modeling anything. Like I could do minor stuff, but I'm no Excel whiz, right? And so knowing these things about myself, I was like, hey, I really enjoy this marketing aspect of things. So I initially dove into that, got the 4-year, got that with marketing. I think it's a BA with a marketing emphasis or something like that. And then worked at Gensco actually here locally in Fife, which I think they're actually at the career fair, if I'm not mistaken. So I was there for a couple of years and again, enjoyed the work, but definitely wanted more growth. I wanted to get involved in finances in some aspect, right? I knew I like trading. I like talking to people about this. I like working with bankers, and I'm like, all right, I need to make it. So I went into sales and did sales there for a bit. And then I saw PitchBook post a position. And again, it was in that sales kind of vein, but I'd be working with folks that I have a passion for speaking about that subject. And I think it was a natural fit, went through a few interviews, and that was 7 years ago. And I'm still there doing that right now. You know, we'll see what happens in the next couple of years, but don't let my employer know. So see what's going on.
Yeah, I was kind of a lost soul. So I don't know how many philosophy classical study majors are in the room, but that was my degree.
Where'd you go to school?
St. Mary's College down in the San Francisco area. I'm from Tacoma, went down to San Francisco, spent 4 years learning philosophy and Greek and graduated. Had no idea what I wanted to do. There's a local pension firm here in Tacoma called Spectrum Pension Consultants. It's owned by the Camacho's family. And they were neighbors of my in-laws. And he said, hey, if you want a job, show up on Monday. And I needed a job. And that was pension consulting work. And I did that for 3 years. But the entire time, everybody back then, Russell was, if you were in Tacoma, there was Warehouse, there was Russell, there was Multicare. And I was very intrigued by Russell because of the investment side. And I applied for 3 years. I probably interviewed 20 times. I was denied 20 times. There was the point where the recruiters knew who I didn't even have to do. I just never worked out. Ironically, it was all for the right purpose. So there were a lot of positions that I look back on now that they weren't right. So I was probably pretty upset that I didn't get one of those 20 jobs that I applied for. It took me 3 years, but I ended up in the institutional group. And I never left. I was there 18 years. So things happen for a reason. The recruiters and the people trying to hire know what they're looking for and what might work. Strange enough. And then I went to Marylhurst University in Portland and got my MBA. So I had a little bit more. Instead of just saying I can read some ancient books in Greek, I got my business degree. Having said that, I think back to a lot of people at Russell. There's people from the military. There's people with PhDs in comparative literature, physics, just a whole swarm of different folks because of their, you can apply your physics degree to modeling, to financial models and things. So George Russell, if folks know, George Russell was a founder. His greatest advice was, I'm always going to hire people smarter than me. And he did. So he hired people for a specific job that were really, really smart. And so at Russell, it was a unique group of people with varying backgrounds. So it wasn't abnormal that people say, what was your degree? And I'd say it was philosophy. The guy sitting next to me had a degree in comparative literature. But we found it took us a while, we all found our knacks and we got to it. Similarly at Protego today, it's a diverse group of people. You have people that have been in banking for 30 years. You have people that have been in crypto since it started. Some people haven't graduated from high school. Some people have PhDs, and we're all working together. And again, it's all of this common theme, and we all take the pieces from it that we need to make the business run. So I would say, just if you are lost, like a lost soul, I still feel kind of lost, that it doesn't matter. It's you find the right fit for you. And it will happen. Now you're gonna have to work out a little bit, but just from the two firms that I've worked with in my entire career, everybody came from very different backgrounds, very different exposures, and I am no different.
I think a theme is don't limit yourself, like explore and see what's out there. That don't pigeonhole yourself just because you think one thing. Chances are you probably don't know much because you haven't been out there, right? So apply, see what's going on, learn about the roles, talk to other professionals in the space, see how their experience has been in a role. I highly advise all of you to try and find a mentor in the space if you can, especially if you're looking to go somewhere. Find someone that's done it, try to emulate the things that they did right and execute on it.
Yeah. And I'm sure you worked along with people from that diverse background. You probably worked with some hardcore finance folks that were CFAs. I can think of a few that you probably know that I worked with.
Yeah, there's obviously certain positions, right? Like if you want to be a research analyst or portfolio manager, or even certain very technical trading positions on our trading desk, they all have their CFAs. Even some of our really specific strategists that work with clients had to have a CFA. So when you joined, you worked and you got it. But you made those decisions as you went along. CFA is not easy, right? It's 3 years and there's a lot of studying. It's a commitment, but you decided that if I want to move down the portfolio management or the research path, I got to have that. But if I'm on the client side a little bit more, I was like, I'll stick with it. So if you find those paths, for sure, there's very technical positions.
And they were right alongside each other. We're collaborative with those folks, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, you sit right next to them. Yeah. And so I think to your point, I think the thing is just that little bit of that North Star. It's a bit of a funny term, but we use that a lot at Protego. Find what your North Star is and just stick with it. So you may have a lot of chaos around you, but if you know generally where you want to go, if it's I want to stay in Washington or if I want to stay in finance, so you have those things. So when you do have opportunities arise, like, oh, this is a great job, but it's in Arizona. Or this is a great job, but it's a lot more money, but I got to do X. If it's not one of your non-negotiables, your North Star, whatever you want to call it, I would have that lined up, because I think as you do good, even if it's within the same firm, hey, Steve, you want to move to our London office? No, I do not. I have my negotiables. I'm from Tacoma. I want to stay in T-Town. My family's from T-Town. My wife's from T-Town. I want to stay here. So I made decisions, right or wrong, that probably would help me move to London. Well, I want to go to London. So I feel like you kind of have to have that North Star. If it's the same firm, a different firm, have those non-negotiables. And I think in the long term, those will always work well.
All right, let's move formally to the advice round.
Okay,
What
great.
advice do you have, Aaron?
That, I loved how you said that, because that, and the way I used to tell people, I like how you do it better with, I used to say, eliminate those things that that you don't want. Yeah, okay, do I want to move? No, those kinds of things. I loved how he said this, but have that. And I always tell people, Stephen Covey's book on 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the part about big rocks, I'm telling you, if there's anything that I think of every single day, it's that visual. And if you haven't read it, read it, because it really grounds you on what are the big rocks? What are the things that are most important? And then you come back to those, because then, there's and you're going to have all sorts of advice. So know yourself. And one of the things I tell people is you're investing in your education, you're networking, you're here, but also invest in knowing yourself, knowing your thinking style. And that's not a personality added. Know how you think, and then learn how other people think, because oftentimes where there's challenges or people struggle is the communication side, understanding each other. So, but if you understand, okay, like we have a commissioner, he's like, I want the answer up front. Okay, great. We build that presentation, say, here's the answer, then we give the detail. Where we have people who, they want all the detail and build to it. So understanding how to communicate at the end of the day is probably one of the critical factors to success. And there isn't one way, just know your way and understand how your way impacts others. I'm a kind of off the chart extrovert. So I love it. I actually did struggle early because I'm in this audit. They want me to sit down and I'm asking, why are we doing this? Why aren't we changing this? Well, wait a minute. And they're like, oh, no, don't do that. And so early on, I didn't conform. But once I kind of understood how to kind of balance being true, to who I am, but to help under people, not overwhelm, other people, how to balance and bring them along, I became more effective. So, that's the thing, invest in understanding you, and then don't look at jobs from title or description. Look at it from criteria. What are the things, this analysis, research, what are the things that you love doing or you want to try doing? And look for those attributes, because now names, titles you really can't tell. And then I would say find employers that you're proud to work for. At the end of the day, you got to be invested, and you want employers that are going to invest in you. And that is one of the things I kind of fell into Weyerhaeuser in the mid 80s, and it was the most tremendous thing that ever happened to me. Part of the culture there was you had to interview and compete for every job. So over the 23 years I was there, I never got rusty. So when I had to go out and look for another job, I'm like, okay, so that, that part of it is really important. And I think I see today's people coming out of school is that part, what the company does, how they contribute to the community, that's important. Then the other advice I would give you is get involved, and not just in things that create, business connections. I'm involved with the American Red Cross. I sit on the Milgard advisory board here for the school, and I'm on the chancellor's board. This will be my second year as a mentor in the Milgard's Women's Initiative. And so take advantage of getting engaged in those types of activities. And I will tell you that the Success Center, this is far and above what most, I'll take the Seattle campus doesn't have something like this. I know my son graduated. I had him talking to Trish. So, and we're being recorded. That's a challenge to Seattle, but the Success Center here is absolutely above and beyond in terms of what they do and how they impact the students. And if you guys haven't been, for the younger students, if you haven't been to the etiquette dinner, like I said, I try and go now. The etiquette dinner I learn something every year. So I would just say you're in the right place, but take advantage of the resources and know yourself.
That's great. We didn't have the Success Center when I went through here, and I would have loved to have had that resource. So as Erin said, soak it up. I'm gonna try to divide my advice into kind of just different contexts, and I'm gonna guide it through my career. So first of all, like just applying for a job or a first job out of college. Erin had touched a little bit on this, but I would focus more on what job you choose and what company you choose for, and having that be in line with what your interests are and where you want to go with your career, and less about the money and the prestige of it. There's so much temptation to want to compare yourself to your classmates, to go after drinks. I got paid this amount. I have taught some classes down at POU in their business school, and have been involved in having interns. And so many people are like, how much money can I make in my first year? Those are great things. I'm gonna get to some advice about negotiating salary, but that's the wrong way to think about going about your selecting your first job. That's my first piece of advice. When it comes to interviewing, choose something you're interested in. Don't just be vanilla. You may be like me and you have no idea what you want to do, but choose something that you want to pursue. It's much easier to move forward and go in a certain direction than to try to go like 5 different directions at once. You can always learn from that. As a potential employer, if someone says, I want to do anything and I don't have any interest, it's like, wow, that's really hard for me to figure out how you match up with the business needs that I have and how successful you're going to be. But if you tell me you got passionate interest in this and I ask you some situational questions and I find out you can do it, I may offer you a job that has nothing to do with either your past experience or your education. So think a little bit about that. Also, give some thought to the situational questions that employers ask. I recently asked someone a question, like, tell me an impossible thing that you were given to do and how you responded and found a way to do it. And his answer was, well, I was supposed to reconcile this budget and get it all right. And I'm like, that's easy. Like, how about something hard? So think about those things and answer genuinely. And don't be afraid to take examples outside of business to answer those questions. Once you get into a role, look at roles or jobs you can take to learn. Be somewhat selective. You don't want to volunteer for every project because some things may not be a good fit for you and your strengths. You might volunteer for something and not be the best person to do it and not do well and have that reflect negatively on you or not have a good employment experience. Also, some things just aren't going to be good initiatives for a company. But think a lot about what opportunities could be there, like internal audit. You also mentioned an implementation of SAP. I think getting involved in software implementations, whether they're ERP systems, CRMs, other forms of software, getting involved in that is a great way to cut your teeth. Learning about technology and the intersection of business process and business activity, technology is great. I accelerated my CFO learning curve significantly because I had to understand parts of our business in order to use software to basically run it from a quote to the customer to collect cash from the customer basis. So those are great opportunities there. On the salary side and negotiating salary, it's a tough spot to be in. I can tell you that once you find the right job, negotiate for the highest salary you can with there. So don't make a decision based on salary, but in any organization, your starting salary is something that you're going to get pegged with. And even if you've earned a promotion somewhere, somebody somewhere in finance is going to say, wait, that percentage wise, that's a really big increase. And so, really negotiate the best you can for that salary. My answer for that, a lot of people are afraid, like, well, should I ask for money? Most business people are not going to be offended if you negotiate a little bit on their initial offer. How you respond to that negotiation and how you handle yourself and your level of professionalism is what matters, not that you ask for something. And you can take your negotiation classes at the undergraduate or graduate level, but most of the time I believe in the adage that someone's first offer is not their final and best offer, and that many times they're expecting you to counter. And the best way to find out is you push it. And I'll give you one small example, and I sit on the customer advisory board, so my influence probably plays a little bit in this, but they acquired a company called KBMX that's a configured price quote tool, and they brought it into the Epicor suite of products to offer to their customers. And they decided to price it just like they did on a standalone basis. I happen to think that's a mistake. I think that for your legacy customers, you should offer it at a discount price point, but they quoted as $200,000 annually, more than doubling my SaaS spend for my ERP. And I basically said to the guy, no, it doesn't work. And I put one of our team members on it to negotiate with him, and he got it down to 150,000. And that didn't work. So basically I brought a couple of their executives out to meet with us, showed them what our team was doing with their product already on a trial basis, wowed them, and said, listen, here's what's in my budget. I can pay $50,000 for this a year. Can you come up back and do that? They went back, they created a special SKU called like CPQ implementation that I could tell was for us, and they countered and gave me $60,000. So, I mean, just an example, you have nothing to do. Now, how did I handle it? I didn't give them an ultimatum and said, I'm gonna leave your platform, but I said, look, I'm a customer that really wants to be part of your ecosystem. I wanna do great things and show off your product. If you have me evaluate this, it's such a core feature to your product, I'm probably going to shop you, but I'm not threatening to shop you. I don't want to. I want to be a customer. You can say that same thing as a potential employee. Hey, I want to have the best earning opportunity. I've got other things out there. I want to be at this company. Can we be at this price and have that? And I think it's the way you handle it versus the people that sort of just say, well, the market says this, or I'm worth that. Those sort of positional tactics don't work very well. But if you bring interest in and really communicate, that's my advice, both on negotiating in general, but also for your salary. And then finally, as you move into a leadership role, don't feel like just because you were a subject matter expert for a period of time in your career and you didn't start off on a management track, that you can't move over there, but recognize that you may have a bit of a learning curve. Oftentimes people in their functional areas will kind of reach the top there, and then what's the next step? Well, it's management. Being a manager is not the same as being a technical expert. And I find that folks that come from technical backgrounds like accounting and finance tend to have those challenges where they were really good and really smart at what they did. And then they try to go to that next level and they really struggle. And so I could go on, and I think any one of us would open ourselves up to having more conversation if you have an interest. But being a leader is more about understanding how to bring out the best in your group. You said George Russell always tried to hire the smartest people. I try to hire people that know accounting and finance way better than I did when I was a CFO. And now I do that in many areas. And one of the things you'll find that no matter where a leader comes from, unmitigated, your area of technical expertise will likely be the underperforming part of your business. And so what you need to do is be humble and recognize, maybe I cut my teeth for a number of years as a technical expert or based on my subject matter expertise. And now I need to go find someone that's smarter than me, or I need to give up this function to someone else because I'm putting a stranglehold on it. So a piece of advice is you make that leadership switch. And when you get to that point, start learning about leadership styles and which leadership styles you exhibit. And it's not about putting a name and vocabulary about it, because there's a million different consulting companies that will give you a million different labels on what leadership is. But ultimately, you need to decide what style is appropriate for what context. You may be in certain situations where you need to be the commander in chief, you need to be directive and say that. But I can tell you, if we were all on the same team and that's how CW treated me, that's how I treated him, at a certain point in time, I'd say, man, that directive style might have made sense in that one spot, but it doesn't. And you can learn other styles like coaching someone and developing them, or being participative and just putting yourself on the same side of the table, like he said he does with his clients. And so what I want to just expose you to in terms of advice is that leadership is multifaceted, and there's a whole different set of skills that you need to learn to be a successful leader. And I'm humbled every day by the mistakes I make and try to learn and grow to be better at what I do in that regard. So there's so much to learn on your career. And I can imagine that there's a lot of trepidation that you have, whether you're an MBA, getting ready to, like, you made this investment, now you're kicking this off, or whether you're an undergraduate, but man, embrace it. That journey, as scary as it can be, and the questions you have can be one of the most fulfilling things that you do in your life. That leads me to the last thing before I pass it to Pat. There's an amazing book out there called Relentless Solution Focus. It also, the term is RSF. And it's just a mental state. It's none of it's new under the sun. It's got a lot of 7 Habits. It's got a lot of Patrick Lencioni in it. This guy, Jason Selk, happened to be the guy that led the St. Louis Cardinals to many of their championships in the 2000s period. And it was this mental tool that he built. It's what I use every single day. So it's, you find your thing, know yourself, and find something to keep you going along that career path.
It's pretty simple. Be an advocate for yourself. You know what I mean? And you know your own skills and strengths better than, and what you need to work on as well, right? So if you really want to attain something, I think you really have to understand what that goal is you're looking for. What parts of it do you meet at that point in time, and what do you need to work on to meet that task? And then be an advocate for yourself, whether that's, hey, no, I'm not going to take on this extra project. You know what I mean? We don't have the resources to tackle this right now. This is going to put way too much bandwidth, and we're not going to be able to complete something. Being realistic about it. Also, on the flip side, raising your hand and jumping into something so that you can learn more skill sets. I think I've successfully argued for a raise twice in my tenure at PitchBook. The reason I could fall back on that is because of my performance. One thing that I wake up and go to work and I do as best as I can every day. And I do that because my motivation, one of my biggest motivations, is wealth building. I'm the money dude, you know what I mean? I love making cash. So if I can wake up and put my, foot on the gas and just put it all the way down and try and do as best I can every day, that output or that input is going to provide the output that I'm looking for. So whatever that is, whether that's wealth building, whether that's, hey, I want to learn how to, get a CRM system to talk to, some sort of other RevOps, SaaS product or whatever that looks like, just make sure that you're an advocate for yourself and you're making sure you're moving that way because no one else is going to do that. Your boss isn't going to. People are nice and they might be looking out for you, but they're not, they don't know intrinsically what you want and what you're going after. So it's important for you to man that ship and go after it. So it's very simple, but I think a lot of people let that fall to the wayside. You got to be an advocate for yourself. And if you're at somewhere and you've learned the skills you have and you aren't able to go into a path that allows you to expand on that or go to that next level that you want, you need to look for a move. You have to go somewhere else. You can't sit there and wallow if it's not going to ever happen. You got to make that change happen for yourself.
Yeah, maybe just refine a couple of things that I agree with everybody has said. This notion of ownership, advocacy. So you own it. It's you. Don't necessarily rely on the company. Don't rely on it. You have to take ownership of your path. Conversely, one of the interview questions I always ask is, tell me a time that you failed and failed miserably, and what did you do about it? And I would say 75% of the people will tell me, well, I can't give you an example. And for me, I'll continue the interview. I'm not really listening because I can't believe that. I mean, you mentioned he makes mistakes every day. How we respond to the mistakes is how I learn these behaviors, how I'm going to work with this person, how they're going to work with our team, how are they going to represent Protego, how are they going to represent Russell. And if they have a bad meeting with a client and they make a mistake, I need to know how they're going to respond to that. So I'm always shocked when people say, I can't give an example of me making a mistake or failing. And I'm just like, that's insane. I make tons of mistakes every day. I finish my day and think about, wow, I could have done better. So that's just for me personally, but that goes into the ownership. You got to own it. And I think that actually says more. Hey, I was trying to do X. I messed up and did Y. I own that problem. Here's what I'm going to do next time.
And what did you learn from it though?
Exactly.
And what are you not going to apply next time?
For sure. So to me, that's number one. Number two, they're together. The second one, I'm not quite sure how to say this. So we work with a huge bandwidth of people, different ages, different backgrounds. As part of the ownership, you got to own how you communicate with them. I might like to text. I might like to do IM. Chris might like to just pick up the phone. It doesn't matter that I don't want to talk on the phone. But if I want to resolve whatever situation, or if I want to sell something or whatever it might be, I'm going to have to pick up the phone because I know that Chris likes the phone, Pat likes texting. Again, own it. You would be surprised at how many communication failures happen because all they want to do is pick up the phone. The person on the other side, well, I don't talk on the phone. I like to do IMs. So put aside your personal preferences and find the best way to communicate. I'll do one-on-ones, with folks that have been out of college, maybe a couple of years. I'll never ask a question with a yes or no answer, but they're pretty short. But if I IM them and say, how you doing? I just get loads of information about their life from an IM. That's just how they like to work, right? If I talk to Bob, who's mid-60s, doesn't like to use a computer, I pick up the phone and call Bob because Bob wants to talk on the phone. So I guess my piece of advice is figure out how to communicate with people, figure out what works best for them. Doesn't matter what you think. If you want to solve that problem, find out how they want to communicate. And I would argue that you will solve more communication problems by finding the right means to do it.
If you can't communicate with people in business,
Find something else.
Hire another person.
Right. All right, now comes to the Q&A round. So let's hear from folks out here.
Question for CW. I work in finance too, for JP Morgan, and I was just trying to see what you do, because you work on the client side, to reassure customers in the volatility of the market for crypto. And then also for the panel, if you were to hire somebody, what's one quality, I guess, that you would look for to hire that person?
So I guess it's not a career question, but I would say it goes back to the notion of trust, right? So I work in a relationship business. I have to build trust, it has to be the trust when you're selling something. So when things do become volatile, when something doesn't look right from a news perspective or from a market perspective, an asset management business and the market's tanking 20%, you find your strongest relationships. You're the people when clients stick with you is because of the relationships you have. So I was at Russell during 2008. Fun time. We had some difficult challenges. We had a large exposure to Lehman, and that put us in a tough spot. But we lost some clients, but we also kept a significant portion of our clients because of the relationships we had. I think it's very similar to crypto, that we're in a crypto winter right now, as they call it, and you have to build those rapport with your clients. And I find that is the way that you deal with those situations. It's about all the lead up that you've done to that point, and that's what gets you across that line.
What was your second question?
Just if you guys were to be a hiring manager or hire somebody, what would be one quality that you look for?
Can I take that first? Coachability.
Yeah.
If you're not malleable and you're gonna just be, it's gonna be a brunt conversation continuously, I'm not interested in work. That's not gonna help. That's not gonna get anything done. It's not gonna help the end person that you're trying to help, not even me, right? I've coached wrestling for years. The best athletes are the ones that obviously have the talent too, right? If they put the work in, and then they're going to open up their ear and see how they can do better. And tenacity and coachability.
Yeah, and the way we describe it is hire for the things you can't train for. So it's that same, I like the coachability part, but inquisitive and someone who at the end of the day wants to give more than they take. And I think a lot of that has to do with when you see interview questions. Those are a lot of things we're trying to tease out. Is this somebody who can come in, wants to be part of a team, can listen? Because you can teach a lot of the technical skills. So it's the things that that they need to have invested in themselves, that they know who they are, that they want to be, that they want to be a part of a team, that they want to learn. You bring those into organization, and that's what creates winning teams.
Yeah, I go back to show that side of ownership. Because it's hard. How are you distinguish yourself from the other million resumes? And everybody's got a nice degree, everybody's got community service and everything else. So when you get the opportunity, shine with how you've owned stuff, how you've done stuff. It's the behavior piece that's most important.
Like you.
Yes.
Everyone can do the skills, right? Like what are you about?
Yeah. Don't ghost on. You'd be surprised. I'm doing a ton of interviews. People ghost our HR department. People ghost final interviews. They'll do the first two. They don't show up.
Yep.
I keep track of everybody that
Don't
goes to me,
ghost.
so don't try to apply again. So some of it's just basic common courtesy. Yeah. You'd be surprised. I'm shocked in the last 2 to 3 years the lack of courtesy that has gone on in the recruiting process because there's a million jobs out there, and they're like, oh, I don't need to. I'll be there at 3, and then they don't show up at 3. So just common courtesy.
So I'm unoriginal. I often steal frameworks from other people and other things, which is why I love my MBA. So he hit on 2 from the framework that I use, and I'll disclose and give credit where credit's due. It actually comes from a guy named Bill Campbell. You want to read about him? There's a book called $1 Trillion Coach. He was actually the mentor to Steve Jobs, Zuckerberg, Eric Schmidt, the 2 founders of Google. Amazing book. And his 4 things were: are you a quick study? I don't care what your GPA was or Kuma, whatever the Sigma thing is. It really is, are you a quick study? Can you pick something up? And you hit on the 2, are you coachable? And will you persevere through something? And are you willing to put in the hard work? The hard challenge is sometimes you find a role that does require some level of technical skill or past experience. So you can't just say that experience doesn't matter, a technical skill doesn't matter, but I'm not going to hire someone no matter how much technical experience and things you have if you don't pass that test. I've learned the hard way, it doesn't work.
They have this technical, they have to have technical, but what else are you gonna sell against the other people that are in there?
So some of what you were saying, Chris, kind of the lost soul of figuring out the next role, that's kind of where I feel like I'm at. How do you get across when you're going to an employer? Like, I'm really excited to work here, but your HR departments are listing all of this stuff, and if you don't meet all this, then don't apply, or they throw your resume. How do you balance between this is the technical stuff that I have to check the 500 boxes you have versus I'm a quick study, I'm excited to be here, I really want to talk to you, just give me 20 minutes. How do you navigate that in an effective way?
And HR gatekeepers are tough. So are automated engines that read resumes and kick you out. The answer is you don't fight that. Don't try to fight through that hill. If your goal is to just submit resumes online and try to get past HR gatekeepers, you don't have the credentials, it's going to be a really hard fight. Just network, build relationships, ask questions, talk to people. Many times those people will get you around the HR gatekeepers, but you have to put yourself and empathize in those people's roles. I have recruiters that work for me. They're making 100 outbound phone calls. It's tough for them to sometimes find those people. And when I meet with our HR team or other folks, sometimes I'm asking them, who are the candidates you said no to? Tell me about those folks. Sometimes and asking to see, it's a little bit like the Minority Report. You see the ones that didn't make it, but from your side, man, that's a tough battle. Don't try to win that one.
You have anything on that one?
Yeah, I would assume, we're an early stage startup, so, and we're looking for very specific roles. And so it's tough sometimes to find what we're looking for. Ironically, we went from 20 people to 130 in a year. And a lot of them were on LinkedIn. They reach out, hey, I'm into crypto and I work at a particular bank and I'd really like to, do you have time to chat? So I would say I can't know the percentage, but there's a substantial number of people that joined our firm by simply pinging either HR, myself, others at the firm through LinkedIn and other means.
Yeah.
I think
And
that's-
have a decent LinkedIn photo. I'm
Yeah.
guessing these photos came off of LinkedIn. I'm not sure where they got our. bios,
I need an
but-
update.
But it doesn't, you don't have to be cookie cutter. You can be your own style, but there are some pretty funky ones. And so if you do that approach, that see this area, make sure that you have a decent LinkedIn profile. That doesn't matter how many followers you have. I don't pay attention to that
No
stuff.
bathroom selfies.
Yeah.
With the tile behind your head.
So if you're gonna reach out, make sure that you've got a decent statement about who you are and what you want to do, and don't be worried about the other stuff, your resume, that can. That's different.
And the one thing that I learned recently with my son going through this process after he got his master's, right during the middle of COVID, was get the right words in there. You know, that on LinkedIn, I mean, LinkedIn is, I mean, it was just kind of like this friendly little thing that sometimes you kind of used, you know, the last time I remember, but it has really grown into a recruiting tool. And so, and that was ultimately how I think he got connected. He works for Abbott Molecular and got an amazing job. But he actually didn't apply for that job because I think, you know, he'd been applying for all these jobs, hadn't heard anything. He's like, I don't meet their criteria. But a recruiter looked at his LinkedIn, and because he had the right terms on there, the right keys, that kind of made the whole thing come together. So I think it's a great tool today.
LinkedIn Sales Recruiter,
Yeah.
LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and
Yeah.
LinkedIn. So I'm a LinkedIn Sales Navigator guy because I'm a business development guy, right? Everyone has a regular LinkedIn. These HR teams have LinkedIn Sales Recruiter, which allows them to actually do the recruiting process on LinkedIn. So to her point, they can pull those terms from a group of candidates or folks that just have marked they're open for employment on there. So use your stuff.
Which your employer can't.
Yes.
Use the Success Center because they can help you with professional resume writing, but also with some of the keywords for given industries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good, really good.
Actually, it's Trish that helped.
All right, yeah, so
Full
it is, yeah.
disclosure, yes,
Yeah,
I came
well,
from
it
the
is. Well,
Success
I mean,
Center.
that does matter. So I said it's a
Yeah.
tough hill to climb, but you might as well stack as many of the chips in your favor. as you can.
So how important do you, when you weigh when you're hiring somebody, the resume versus the interview? So like, I'm very good at writing, but I'm not very good at speaking. I have aphasia, so I have problems getting words out sometimes. So sometimes when I'm talking, I sound like I don't know anything because my brain doesn't communicate with my mouth. So, but so most of the time when I'm in interviews, I write everything down and then I say it because that's the only way I can get it out. And I feel like that's been a problem in interviews. So I don't know, I know I have a good resume, but I don't know if my interview is good because I can't get a lot of words out. As you can tell while I'm speaking, I'm having a hard time getting the words out. So
I have a buddy that is, he doesn't have aphasia, but he similar brilliant guy. He actually graduated here when he was 20 and I was 23 at the same time. He was doing Writing Star, just a computer programmer. same thing though, with the computer programming, a lot of them are doing whiteboard activities, right? So you're speaking, he has to get up there and walk through and talk through. And it's not that he doesn't know how, he's brilliant, he knows how to go through, he just doesn't know how to articulate it as well. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the resume is your entry piece, right? And then that interview is going to be what seals the deal. So I think, again, I've only hired salespeople mainly, right? I've been on that side of things, but I think when someone comes in and approaches and talks about that up front, hey, this is something I'm struggling with, or this is just part of my life. I want you to know that about me. And then going into it, sure, you might have someone that doesn't vibe for them, but then you probably don't want to be working for that person either. You know what I mean? At that point. So, maybe it's 20 interviews instead of 10 or something like that, but but the way I'm reading it, you're going to end up happier in that with someone that's willing to work with you in that regard. I don't know if you guys have anything to add on to that.
Yeah, I mean, being on the client side, it goes back to, again, who is the right person for the role of the client. And so part of it's communication, part of it's the relationship piece again. So you're looking at the whole picture. So the speaking part is only one aspect of it. I'm looking at your presence. We call it client presence. I would literally have a whole job part of your client presence. How do you present yourself in front of clients? And so that part is important. So that's appearance, that's speaking, that's engagement, that's response. It's the whole thing. So I feel like that's just one small part.
To answer your question directly, I think the interview matters more than the resume.
Yep.
I would encourage you to be authentic, and there's different ways to be authentic. I would be brief about it, but if you want to be direct about, is it aphasia that we call it?
Patient, yes.
I would tell someone that and say, when you ask me a question, may I have a moment to write down my thoughts and respond to you? I think that that's a lot more effective way to communicate with someone, because then instead of trying to be something that you're not, or that doesn't work for you, they will understand and appreciate that. We all battle with different things. Some are more visible to others. I battle with stuttering, and stuttering is nothing more than hearing your own words and then overthinking it and having those words get out of your mouth. And I've done different things to work on that and be okay speaking directly with people. When I get into something that I'm nervous about, or I don't know, that's when the stuttering typically comes out. And so I've seen that in interviews with people, and that's never been a roadblock for me. And try to encourage them to slow down, think about their answers, and not have to have rapid fire responses.
I've had, to be honest, I've had crippling anxiety to the point that I couldn't even go to my office, and I would go up to Seattle and hop on a train and come back home. And I had one of the best months I ever had as a sales rep. And I personally took ownership of that and found a therapist and talked for years, and still go and talk to that person to work through those issues, because I don't want that to be a hindrance. It's a part of me, and I accept that. And if someone else can't and they want you to be part of their organization, it's not the right person.
I mean, that sounds good, but I need to pay my bill, so.
I would just be transparent about it and ask for the time to respond.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is, do your homework on the company. That's what I look for. I mean, whether you're, kind of opening up, kind of structuring it in a way that says, hey, this is, for me, I'm gonna take some time, I'm gonna write some notes, I'll respond. The key is, did you do your homework? Are you gonna ask, what are those impact questions that you ask at the end? That's your opportunity. And that, a lot of times it's, answering the questions, but at the end of the day, it's what questions are you asking them? Have you really thought about us as an employer? Have you really understand, or are you really truly curious about what we do? So that part of the interview to me is much more impactful, in terms of, you're right, everybody's nervous. And so, if you listen, and people often, if they're anxious, oh, could you repeat the question? Just being comfortable and being, authentic is what we're looking for. But also, have you done your homework?
And authenticity applies to everybody. Just be real.
Yeah.
Don't try to say the perfect thing. Don't try to sound eloquent.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left. So more questions out there?
I wanted you to briefly go over one of the topics, or two of them actually, that you went over earlier, which was alternative-based assets versus the other equity, private equity, real estate, and things of that nature, but how they're categorized. And then also the implementation of, I guess, cybersecurity, or I think you said it was a CRP.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
ERP system. Yeah, and also I wanted to talk to you about RevOps with these folks as well, because they're all finance people. Real quick. RevOps is a great place to look if you're a finance person that's also looking to get tangentially involved with like software structure and how the company systems talk to each other. And data analytics and RevOps is a great marriage of those. So if you're looking for some interest there, and ERP systems, which Chris can speak to more eloquently, is absolutely a part of that system, right? APIs, talking to different systems. What was your name? Sorry, what was your name?
My name is Tess.
Tess, and what's your name?
Remote.
Remote, what are you doing at JP Morgan? Are you doing
Business relationship manager. So I
on the
work-
equity side?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So what he does is he's working at public companies, ETFs,
Yeah.
maybe mutual funds as well?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so that is traditional finance, right? That's public equities, that's public markets. That is the massive side of the business, right? Like, yeah, that's Meta, that's Snap, that's Verizon, that's all those companies. And you've got analysts at different research groups, to this point, CFAs, following these stocks and writing what they think how the stock's going to perform. And they're selling that research out to bankers and investment shops, and even groups like Morningstar, our parent company that owns PitchBook, would provide a lot of that through Edward Jones or Russell Investments for the individual side of it, like if they were helping you in your portfolio. So that's that side of the market. This other side of the market, and you keep hearing this term CFA, which is this process that you go through to get a certain licensing, right? Those are the folks that are doing like the modeling. They're looking at specific, was it a growth round or an LBO that you guys went through this last year?
LBO.
An LBO. So that's a leveraged buyout. Private equity is on this side part, right? So they go in and buy companies. These folks that have CFAs are structuring deals to buy companies like Chris's company that they work for, right? There's also a million different ways to do those deals. There's venture capital, there's growth equity. So the main thing that to take away from this is you have the alternatives market. I would suggest for anybody interested in the alternatives market or hedge funds and that kind of stuff to go to Investopedia and look at how that distribution of capital goes down from limited partners to general partners down to investments. And there's a lot of jobs in between in that field, all participating in different aspects of that private market. And it is a growing market, and it needs finance professionals. So do you have any other questions on that, or is that it?
I mean, I'm still a junior, so I haven't heard a lot of this information, but to clarify, you said public markets, private entities, and like alternative, is that kind of correct?
Absolutely, yeah, those are like three overarching categories. What I would do for anyone that's not familiar with the space and is interested, look into private markets, understand what private markets are. Just go into Google, go into Investopedia, look at private markets, look at venture capital, look at private equity, and look at real estate. And just learn, go into it and learn.
One of the points that Pat made that I want to repeat so that everyone hears it loud and clear is that the diversity of job opportunities is vast. You know that like part of the chapters of for like accounting or finance, like careers in finance or job opportunities. It lists like, 6 or 7, there's like 600 or 700 different opportunities out there. And what Pat's talking about is that money is always moving in different ways and it's changing. So part of the advice is just follow the money.
Yeah.
How is money getting to different places? There are jobs there. One example is that if you go back to the 1980s, the average size of a firm that was going public, I want to say, and I'm in the right range, it was like 50 million to 100 million.
Yeah.
That's unheard of today. I'm at the top end of that range with the firm that I run, but there's no way a firm like mine would get capital that way. And so that's been replaced since you have small privately held businesses that want to either raise capital or sell, they have to go to different markets to get access to that. They don't get it there anymore. And what he's talking about are those different markets, and there's so many different ways to supply capital to this business. So like you said, go to Investopedia, learn about this, see where the money's going, look up the name of the companies, Google names of the companies. You're going to find so many different investment banks. You're going to find search all the
firms in this area.
They're going to serve all levels. And you might have to take an analyst role. You might have to work 80 hours a week, and you have to know yourself and know whether that's a yes or no. Some people might say yes to moving to London. So you got to know yourself. It's not a right or wrong. Because some people might not want to do that. I'll tell you, you work 80 hours a week as an analyst, you close some of these deals, you're going to learn so much in a couple of years that, people would spend a lot longer learning. So yeah, it's a great.
Well, and to his point earlier, once you learn that and you go into that next section of your life, now you have this base knowledge set, you understand the industry and you're like, I hate this about this. I kind of like this. This is cool. I'm going to go to, let's take this specialization and go to the next level and maybe apply a leadership opportunity to this. Maybe, hey, I've mastered this. Now let's run a team of 5 and help those people understand it better and then also progress myself in that career. So I just think a lot of people focus heavily on EY, KPMG, these PwC, these large accounting firms, which is totally cool. And you should totally go get a job there if that's what you're interested in doing. But you can get these same roles at a myriad of different investments, pension funds, yada, yada, yada. And if you're interested, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to just kind of chat with you, send you some resources if you want to just understand that kind of stuff.
And those are the kind of places that if you beat down their door and you say, hey, I'm interested, you reach out to 10 of them, at least 3 are going to respond to you and give you a shot.
Yeah, not like applying at Salesforce, or something like that, and for one of 20 open roles for the same position.
Yeah, probably got time for 1 or 2 last questions, depending on how much time they take.
Go ahead. How do you really build like a network that you can use to your advantage? Like, for example, like I have a friend where she left an organization and she doesn't have any downtime between jobs because other organizations already know and are reaching out to hire her. Whereas if I leave an organization, I'm grinding out resumes and interviews for several months before I get into my next position. So how do I build that network?
Going to things like this. I mean, right at you got to. Each level is different, right? Like the circle Chris is running in now is going to be different than my circle. That's different than your circle, right? So I think it's make sure you're the dumbest person in the room. You know what I mean? As often as you can, make sure everybody is smarter than you and learn from that and try to be in as many rooms as you want. And then to her point, volunteering in these different aspects, getting involved in community things. You're going to have folks of all different cuts that are going to be participating in that, and maybe you have a similar interest too. So maybe you're into golf and the other person's into golf, and you guys go out and you learn more about, hey, this VP of investments at whatever, and you start learning more about the role and taking a genuine interest into it. And I think it's also great. You should ask people to be your mentor. If you feel comfortable, somebody, reach out to them, see if that's someone that can coach you and guide you. I've coached wrestling for years. I love when somebody approaches me and asks, hey, Pat, I'm looking for some advice on how to do this thing. I want to execute on this goal because I'm really passionate about this and this is how I want to take my life. I love seeing that. I'm like, oh, awesome. You got me hyped. I got energy. Like, let's do this. Yeah, I want to see you take it to the next level. And then I want to watch it for the next 20 years while you absolutely crush it. And that's all I want. You know what I mean? Like that feels good to be able to know I was a part of being able to help that. So go out and search for those people in your community and use the mediums that you have to get in front of those opportunities. And if you don't have those mediums, search for them, get involved in local things, join a Rotary Club, you know what I mean? Go on LinkedIn and see if there's an equity group that likes to do stock picks and they meet twice a month or something like that, right? Like put yourself out there, just don't sit at home and Netflix it.
Yeah.
And the other thing, again, I've mentioned the Success Center. There is so much talent working at this university. And and they go so far beyond just their experiences and their knowledge, beyond education. So, you're at an institution where so many of the people in administration or faculty have a tremendous network. And you'd be amazed. So, you're in the right place, to be asking for this, and whether it's Trish or some of the others, the network, and it's really impressive. It is really impressive how, and they're here to help you. That's why they work at this institution. So this is a great place. Just this event is one of many, but again, the networks that these folks have and the alumni network. This is a university that honestly has a very untapped alumni network. And that's something that we're looking at from the business school. How do we continue to create a network? You're part of a university that has a tremendous network. So, but I'll tell you, the Success Center is, again, it is a jewel. So keep using it.
Do you have a response to this one?
I would just say, outside of everything everyone else has said about your network, let's see what in your job itself. So I think about Protego, and I started with like 20 of us, and say, okay, I need to find I'm looking for very specific people, and I actually hired folks that I used to work with, not at Russell, but they were Russell's vendors. Because I thought, like, who is the best for this role? And I haven't worked with him for 3 or 4 years, but I hired Liam in Boston because I knew that was the right guy. Conversely, when I was at Russell, we hired clients. So there was CFOs and CIOs and the clients that were our clients, and we had an open strategist position, and they hired our clients. So for me, it's not only just the outside the firm, it's inside the firm, it's your vendors, it's the whole rapport with who you work with, because you never know when, hey, I need this role, and I know Chris, I've worked with Chris in this capacity, I'm gonna call Chris and see if he wants to work. So you never know when someone's gonna pick up the phone and call you because I worked with you 5 years ago, and that's exactly what I'm like.
Have you ever heard of the PayPal Mafia? You ever heard that term? That's a very specific example of that, but there's folks that go to start firms, they're 4 or 5 people, all first jobs. You build that network, you're all brilliant, and you build off that, you know what I mean? To his point, you go to the next place, maybe you bring one person and that person knows another person, now you got this new ecosystem, right? And you're executing on opportunities. So maybe it's not the first step, it's your second step, right? Maybe you're getting in the door, exploring that, and that's your jumping off point, right? It's different for everybody.
It is. All right, I'm gonna wrap here in a second. I do want to respond to that, and I don't want to beat up on you on your choice of language, but you asked me, how can I build a network that I can use? And I think you need to flip that around and talk about how you can give to others. And I would say follow your interests, follow your passions. Also, I want to go back to something that CW said. He keeps a list of everybody that ghosts him. And, you're not going to build a network by doing that. But one thing I'll share with you guys, which is both a cool thing and a bit of a cautionary tale. I told you I'm on the Epicor Customer Advisory Board. I'm at their annual convention, speaking on stage with their CIO, and I had people came back to me and they said, hey, we rode on the airplane with you from Seattle all the way to Nashville. We had no idea we were sitting next to the speaker. And I'm like, and they said, you were just so nice and polite to the stewardess the flight attendant. That stuck out to us. Those things matter. You never know when someone's watching you. So don't pretend to be nice, just be genuinely nice and interested. And you never know who's going to be watching you. Because I guarantee you that would have killed my network if someone had seen me on stage and then saw how I was duplicitous on the other side of things.
Berating the flight attendant,
yeah. So anyway, there you go. Thank you guys for coming. I'll let you guys use the restroom before the next one.